The Holy Gospel according to St. Mark, the 7th chapter.
Glory to you, O Lord.
Jesus set out and went away to the region of Tyre. He entered a house and did not want anyone to know he was there. Yet he could not escape notice. But a woman whose little daughter had an unclean spirit immediately heard about him, and she came and bowed down at his feet. Now the woman was a Gentile, a Syrophoenician origin. She begged him to cast the demon out of her daughter. He said to her, "Let the children be fed first, for it is not fair to take the children's food and throw it to the dogs." But she answered, "Sir, even the dogs under the table eat the children's crumbs." Then he said to her, "For saying that, you may go. The demon has left your daughter." So she went home, found the child lying on the bed, and the demon gone. Then he returned from the region of Tyre and went by way of Sidon toward the Sea of Galilee, in the region of the Decapolis. They brought to him a deaf man who had an impediment in his speech, and they begged him to lay his hand on him. He took him aside in private, away from the crowd, and put his fingers into his ears, and he spat and touched his tongue. Then looking up to heaven, he sighed and said to him, "Ephphatha," that is, be opened. And immediately his ears were opened, his tongue was released, and he spoke plainly. Then Jesus ordered them to tell no one. But the more he ordered them, the more zealously they proclaimed it. They were astounded beyond measure, saying, "He has done everything well. He even makes the deaf to hear and the mute to speak." The Gospel of the Lord.
Praise to you, O Christ.
You may be seated. A couple of weeks ago, we had a great rally day. We had kids and adults filling the fellowship hall with refreshments, something to eat, and signing up for Sunday school classes, and it was a great day. Last week was a holiday weekend, so attendance wasn't really that great. So today is when we really get going. We hope that every Sunday, children and adults will worship together and learn together, and leave this place feeling more encouraged than they did when they walked in. Parents, grandparents, please bring your little ones to Sunday school and find a class for yourself. You know, as much as I kid my Baptist friends, maybe they do have a better idea. So let me see the hands of anybody who wants to buy us a bus and drive it around and pick up the kids on Sunday morning. Any takers? I didn't think so. But you see, I'm pushing Sunday school. We need you here, and you need to be here. Now, this is not to say that Sunday school is foolproof. Not everything is fully understood by the students or the teachers even. One Sunday morning, the pastor was walking through the Sunday school wing and stopped in to the 4th grade class. While he was there, he decided to see what the kids were grasping. "Joey," he said, "who knocked down the walls of Jericho?" Joey said, "Don't look at me, Pastor. I didn't do it." The pastor looked at the teacher for an explanation. "Well, Pastor, if Joey said he didn't do it, he didn't do it." The pastor brought that story to the church council. And when they heard it, the congregational president said, "Pastor, let's just fix the walls and take it out of the property budget." Well, hopefully things may be not quite that chaotic in our Sunday school. But this much we can promise you. Every child will be safe and feel loved every week. And every week they will hear about a Jesus who thinks they are a unique and precious daughter or son of God. Guaranteed. I wish the same could be said for children in our neighborhoods, or the adults in our cities, or the employees of large corporations, or the refugees in third world countries, or the minority populations in any culture. But the fact is, safety is in short supply today, and love and acceptance is unknown to many people in our world. But this is not new. You see, this uncertainty about our value and our worth has been present for countless generations. And the gospel lesson that is ours today offers a glimpse into two people's lives and circumstances that we just read about. The first marginalized person is a mother who approaches Jesus with a rather, you would think, innocent request. Master, my daughter has an unclean spirit. Would it be too much to ask you to come by my house and heal her? We would expect Jesus to say yes immediately. The Jesus we know stands ready to touch the life of anyone who is in need, but especially a small child. So when the woman makes her need known to him, we assume he's going to follow her home. But that's not what Jesus does. Not even close. You see, the woman was a Syro-Phoenician. She was a non-Jew who came from the area that is now present-day Lebanon. So do you see the problem? The people of Israel and the people of Lebanon have been at odds all these centuries. She was an outsider, this woman. She came from a region that was notorious for its sinfulness. In fact, the ethnic slur that the Jews held for the Lebanese was dogs. They referred to those people as dogs. So what would Jesus do? He does something that seems at first out of character for him. He says to the woman, "Let the children be fed first. It is not right to take the children's food and throw it to the dogs." Curious, don't you think? Even sounds a little harsh coming from Jesus. But perhaps Jesus was just testing her. In fact, playfully testing to see her response. Some scholars say that the term Jesus used here means puppies instead of dogs. It's not right to take the ministry meant for the Jews and give it to the puppies. Well, whatever the reason, the woman did not shy away. She continued to press Jesus for a miracle. "But sir," she said, "even the dogs are allowed to eat the crumbs that fall from the children's table." The woman is saying two things. First, that she understands the way things are. The Jews are God's chosen ones. They sit at the table. They receive God's rich blessing. The woman understood all this. But she also says that just the leftover blessings were enough to heal her daughter. Her faith was such that even the crumbs of Jesus' grace were sufficient. And Jesus was so moved by the woman's faith that he didn't even have to follow her home. "Woman, for saying that, you can go home because your daughter has already been healed." I think there are two distinct groups of people in our congregation today and practically every Sunday. There are members of this congregation, some who have been here for 10, 20, and some even for the whole 30 years since we started this church. And every time they drive by, they're proud to say, "That's my church," because this is where they share their skills and their abilities. They give their offerings here. This is very much their extended family. But a second group present today are the visitors. Possibly some even first-time worshipers. The friends of the congregation who have been here for a while but have never joined. You wonder if you are really welcome here. You wonder if your kids can actually be a part of our Sunday school, or if your teenagers can come to the confirmation class, or if you can sing in the choir. I've had parents call to have their child baptized and say, "Pastor, I know we're not members, but do you think our daughter might be baptized in your church?" Like the Syrophoenician woman, each of you is asking if you could at least get some crumbs that fall from our table. The answer is, you can have the whole loaf. You don't have to be a member here to worship or sing or serve or pray with us. The gospel is free to everyone. There is enough grace for everyone. When we have a potluck dinner, you're invited to that too. Christians ought to always be drawing the circle large enough to include as many as possible, instead of small enough to exclude some. It was St. Augustine who once said that the church is the only institution or organization in the world that exists for people who haven't yet joined. May you never feel like you don't belong here. May you never feel like an outsider looking in. You are members of our family that we haven't met yet, and we welcome you. No boundaries here. But the gospel text today features another man who had been marginalized by society. He was deaf, and he had a speech impediment as well, which might suggest that he had been deaf from birth. But the man had friends, and they brought him before Jesus and asked Jesus for a healing. And again, Jesus does a curious thing, something we would never think to do. He placed his fingers in the man's ears. Then he put some spit on his finger and touched the man's tongue and shouted out, "Ephphatha, be opened." And immediately the man was able to speak and to hear. Jesus did not say, "Speak and hear," but rather, "Be opened." Jesus knew that the man had stuff locked up inside him that needed to find a way out. And because of his deafness, there were things that were locked out that needed to find their way in. Be open, Jesus said, to speak and to listen, to give and to receive, to learn as well as to teach. And I would suggest to you that this is God's expectation of the Christian community as well, to be opened, to be willing to consider new things, to be willing to listen even though we may disagree, to risk sharing our thoughts and feelings even though others may reject us, to make ourselves vulnerable so that we can know and be known by the members of this church. And yet the church is often filled with deaf mutes, people who are unwilling to risk sharing who they are and what they believe. To you and to all of us, Jesus is calling out, "Ephphatha, be opened." It's safe here. People will not ignore you or reject you or condemn you. And if they do, it's only because they themselves are still locked up in their silent, muted world. The surprise in the gospel is that we always get more than we ask for. The woman whose daughter was sick was simply asking for crumbs, but she received the bread of life. The deaf mute simply wanted noise, but instead he was given a voice and a purpose and a life. How will God surprise us as we gather in the coming weeks and months? I'm not really sure what God has in mind for us. But we know that He will be with us. By bringing in new friends, by calling old friends to their eternal home, we don't know. But what we do know is this, that we are family. And all of us are family. And God does have a future for us. We commit the coming days to Him. Thanks be to God. Amen.